Today, having a heart attack means a quick trip to the hospital, a simple procedure, and a return to home the next day. Most patients come out of the situation alive and healthy. Yet, looking back at just a century ago, heart attacks were a death sentence. Even as doctors attempted to treat it, there was only one recorded person who survived, and he died less than 3 days later. To understand how medicine made the leap from this point to this point, we need to investigate a revolutionary invention created by a rookie scientist: cardiac catheterization. This is a catheter. If it seems simple, that's because it is. A catheter is just a long, thin tube. In fact, similar designs can be traced back to ancient civilizations, such as China, Greece, and Rome. But this seemingly primitive design would be utilized in something never before seen in the medical field: interacting with the human heart. In a time when every scientist feared the complicated organ, the invention of the cardiac catheter was a breakthrough unlike any other, and the huge amount of research that would follow went on to save millions of lives. This is the story of an invention limited by the beliefs of its time, and how that same invention would be pivotal in curing a supposedly incurable disease. In the 1920s, there was a widespread consensus about the heart that no medical professional should attempt to operate it. In previous centuries, there had been breakthroughs in research in cardiology, such as the discovery that blood circulated through the body powered by the heart, cementing it as a vital organ. After that discovery, however, research stagnated. Even as nearly all other organs in the human body were studied, study of the heart remained taboo. Back then, the only way to observe and operate on the heart was to open up the patient's chest and directly interact with it, operating on a constantly moving organ smaller than one's fist, all with the knowledge that any small mistake could stop the heart and kill your patient. So, for decades, cardiac research was held back by this immense stigma. While experiments on animals were conducted with some degree of success, any real discovery could only be achieved by research in humans. And in this fog of stigma and fear, what the medical world needed was a leap of faith. In 1929, a 25-year-old cardiologist walked into a bar. This cardiologist was Dr. Werner Forssmann. His idea? He was going to conduct human experiments. Throughout his career, Forssmann had always been enamored with cardiac catheterization, a method that involved pushing the catheter through the veins in one's arm and straight into the heart. Forssmann did extensive research on the method, first successfully performing it on a dog and then truly believing that it could be performed on a human. Other scientists believed he was insane. He was forbidden to continue his experiments, as his supervisors thought that the inserted tube would cause cardiac arrest. Forssmann disagreed. Despite resistance from his superiors and his peers, Forssmann continued his research in secret and operated on human cadavers and animals. But these methods of experimentation weren't enough. To prove his methodology, he would need to defy the traditions of the medical community in a rogue experiment. He would need a way to access a human. The opportunity presented itself in Eberswalde Surgical Clinic. His access? A nurse named Gerda Ditzen. Forssmann manipulated Ditzen into agreeing to be a human test subject, but in reality, Forssmann had simply used her to access the hospital's storage of catheters. Having obtained a urinary catheter, the only type available at the time, Forssmann inserted it into his own arm. After pushing the catheter nearly 35 centimeters up his vein, he ran, with the catheter still in his body, to take proof in the form of an X-ray of his findings. These are the results that he gathered. This is the catheter, and it leads all the way into this area, the heart. Forssmann had done it. He had been able to non-fatally access the heart, inserting a foreign device into the organ with nearly no side effects, a feat never before seen in the field of medicine. Forssmann then went on to publish his results in a scientific journal. He believed his findings to be revolutionary, something that would completely change cardiology and medicine. Yet, his discovery would be met with horror from his peers. They believed his experiment too dangerous, and Forssmann to be a madman. Forssmann would be removed from his position at the clinic, ostracized from the medical community. He would be forced to find a new career, with his research on cardiac catheterization brought to an abrupt stop. What would have been the turning point to a medical revolution was buried in the obscure pages of a little-known scientific journal. In 1940, two physicians at Bellevue Hospital had stumbled upon an article that piqued their interest. Dr. Andre Cournand and Dr. Dickinson Richards. Together, they had found an article titled Probing the Right Heart, the same article that Forsman had published a decade before. From that paper, Cournand and Richards unearthed the key to the next medical revolution: the ability to access the inside of the heart. What Forsman had originally invented was specifically right heart catheterization, and as it was picked up by Cournand and Richards, the procedure stayed largely the same, except they were now using a specialized cardiac catheter. Cournand and Richards worked for years on refining Forsman's right heart catheterization, and by 1945, they were able to set up the first ever cardiac catheterization laboratory in Bellevue Hospital. It was an instant hit. For the first time, physicians could evaluate the heart without directly opening the patient's chest, and right heart catheterization quickly became standard practice to manage complex heart failure patients across the globe. In 1958, Dr. Mason Stones invented the coronary angiogram, utilizing a contrast agent, a special dye, to highlight the heart's blood vessels. With this method, the heart could finally be seen for the first time in medical history. With both methods now released into the world, medical professionals were faced with an opportunity and a challenge. With the heart being completely and safely viewable for the first time in medical history, came the race to use that technology, diagnose heart disease, and cure it. With the angiogram came the ability to see the primary cause of a heart attack: a blockage in one of its vital arteries. This blockage, made up of mostly fat and cholesterol, is known as a plaque. A plaque in the heart can form a clot and block blood flow, with the potential to damage large portions of the heart muscle itself. Heart attacks before the 1970s had required full open heart surgery. These were often extremely risky. Even if a patient survived the surgery itself, there was a high likelihood that they would die during recovery. Having observed this, Dr. Andreas Grunzig, a cardiologist in the 1970s, was able to use a catheter to deliver a small balloon into the heart's artery. This balloon would flatten the plaque, widening the artery and allowing more blood to flow through. This process came to be known as the balloon angioplasty. The angioplasty was a significantly less invasive alternative to open heart surgery, where the blockage could be fixed without having to cut the heart open. Though angioplasty also widened the age range of those who could be treated. Seniors and infants, previously ineligible for surgery on their hearts, could now be saved with a simple procedure. With the invention of the angioplasty, the revolution put into motion by Werner Forsman's experiment finally demystified the heart attack, transitioning it from being a death sentence to being completely treatable. It wasn't just those technologies, however. Countless new innovations popped up in this cardiac revolution, all built upon Forsman's original catheterization technique. Ablation, using specialized catheters and radio waves to fix irregular heart rhythm. Leadless pacemaker placement. Through a catheter, a device that regulates the heartbeat can be delivered and implanted right on the heart muscle. These, along with countless more. By 2013, the mortality rate of heart disease declined by more than 70%. A change put into motion by two physicians, a mad scientist, and the pivotal human experiment of cardiac catheterization. There's no doubt about the huge turning point that catheterization was for cardiology and medicine in general. But heart disease is still a huge problem. In fact, medical professionals have even gone as far to describe it as an epidemic. Even as heart disease lost its status as a death sentence, cardiovascular diseases still claim 17 million lives every year. We're still working on improving treatment, and in the coming years, it seems that even more innovations are sprouting from Forsman's catheterization.
Less invasive is the trend. As research really uncovers the fact that its value, those are going to be adopted more and more. Patient suffers with a heart attack, that heart muscle is dead. So there's going to be evolution in which we're able to inject cells to stimulate growth, and then we're able to close holes in the heart called defects.
It's hard to believe that, even with modern technology, heart disease remains an enigma, and the world's largest killer. Yet, comparing the severity of this epidemic to a century ago, it's clear that Forsman's invention of cardiac catheterization was a turning point that led to the medical revolution and a worldwide effort against the illness.
We're waiting for Star Trek to happen, and pretty soon we're going to wave a wand and disease will go away is what we hope.
The immense impact of cardiac catheterization can be best represented in a quote by the first person to have ever received an angioplasty, Dolf Bachmann. Few would have imagined that 30 years after the visionary invention, I would be free of any troubles with my heart, and that the cardiac catheter would represent a worldwide victory. Perhaps someday in the future, catheterization technology will advance so much, so far, that any form of heart disease could be cured in just a heartbeat.